All right, folks, welcome to the runningrestaurants.com podcast. We're bringing you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to make your restaurant more profitable and successful. I'm your host, Jamie Oikel. Today, got a great episode for you. Got Peter Yang, co-founder of Pokeworks, which is just a very fast, expanding, quick casual. So, Peter, you guys are growing fast. Welcome, man. Tell me about it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Pokeworks. We are the nation's leading poke fast casual restaurant. We're currently at 72 locations across 20 states, and brick by brick, we're growing this thing.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about you guys, but I want you to kind of tell me the story. Where was the first location? How did you get started? Why restaurants?
Yeah. So I've been in the restaurant industry pretty much my whole life. My parents had restaurants, and that's
Mhm.
where I earned my allowance. When I
Yeah.
was a teen. So I've done dishwashing, busser. Eventually, my dad allowed me to lead the team and become a manager, and then me and my brother who's also a co-founder of Pokeworks, we've been in this space since we're little kids, and we're lifers. We love it. We don't know anything else, honestly. But Pokeworks is just, the vision came from the simple idea of introducing poke to the masses. And
Mhm.
poke has been, not sure if you're familiar, but it's a Hawaiian dish, right?
Mhm.
And it's been enjoyed on the islands for decades, if not century. And it's a very simple, clean dish of seafood over rice with toppings with other mix-ins. And Story is my brother and I, we had a project in Oahu back in around 2013, 2012. We had another project on the island. And while we were out there, we had a lot of poke.
Yep.
And if you ever went to the islands for poke, you can get it at poke shops. You can get it at grocery stores where you can get it almost like in a deli container by the pound. Get a scoop of rice, head over to the beach, and it's just a fantastic meal, right? And that's what we did after a long day at the job site. We're like, you know what, let's get something quick and clean and healthy. And we had a lot of that, and we enjoyed it. And around 2015, we met with our other co-founder, who's also in the restaurant space, and he just had a wedding in Maui, and he was also saying, you know what, I've also had the same experience having great poke on the islands, and
Yep.
why don't we have it here in the mainland? And there was an aha moment for my brother and I. We had a sushi restaurant as well in the early 2000s, and we kind of saw the evolution of the acceptance of raw seafood, right? I remember when we first had the Japanese restaurant, we had bento boxes, teriyaki chicken, katsu chicken, and that's what
Mhm.
everybody ordered. Every once in a while, someone was like, "Hey, give me the salmon sashimi, give me the tuna sashimi." But towards the end, around 2006, 2007, pretty much, you know, a lot more people were getting the raw seafood, and kids were enjoying it too. And so, just the acceptance and realizing how delicious salmon and tuna can be, when it's done sashimi or sushi style, really came to the forefront. And so we're like, well, shoot, poke is essentially the same thing. It's very similar. There's a lot of
Mhm.
similar flavors, and it hits the trend of the fast casual segment, where food on the go, more affordable, it's more customizable, and we're like, hey, let's give this thing a shot. Right. So 2015, we started planning this. We started designing the brand, and
Mhm.
20 end of 2015 is when we opened our first location in Midtown Manhattan.
Oh, your first location was in New York?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, right. 37th Street, right below
I
Bryant
don't
Park.
think that's not the easiest place to open your first restaurant, by the way.
Yeah, I was out there for about 8 years
Yeah.
for some other concepts, and just just timing, honestly, with how
Yeah.
things worked out. But we were really bullish on this concept from the beginning. So we signed three leases at the same time: one
Uh-huh.
in Northern California, one in Southern California, and one in New York City.
Okay.
And the New York City happened, just everything worked out, opened fast. We took a tiny, tiny store. It's 700 square feet
Yeah.
with a tiny little basement, and 8 feet wide. It's pretty much a hallway. And
Yeah.
the thought is, let's kind of grab the lunch crowd. People will come in and out. We had six little booths by the front door. Otherwise, it's just the assembly line. You go in and come out. Um, but it opened, yeah, December of 2015. Everyone was already gone for the holidays. The city was dead quiet,
Right.
and people came in. They're like, "What the heck are you guys serving here? What is this thing?" And no one knew what poke was. So there was a little bit period of education. But
Yeah, you have to
yeah,
educate the market. Right, right,
mhm.
right.
But
It's
yeah,
it's fascinating. I've lived in New York, worked in New York for years. I'm in Florida now for years as well, but
mhm,
recently revisited the city, and I forgot how intense the city was. And in terms of restaurants too, I was bringing my daughter in there really for one of the first times, and she's like, "How do you choose where to eat?" Because there's literally 5, 10 restaurants on this street, 20
yeah.
restaurants on that street. There's so many choices. So a very competitive spot.
Mhm,
But so many people, right? It's the density that must have
yeah.
been a fascinating thing. So you quickly went from 1 to 3, it sounds like.
Mhm.
What happened after that?
Yeah, the one of three. Irvine opened second, and then the next was Mountain View in Northern
Oh,
California.
nice.
And our New York store really took off.
Mhm.
With by January, February, everyone's coming in. People who were familiar, like, oh my God, we have poke in the city now. Yes, they
Yeah.
come, they share it on Instagram, and our food is so vibrant when
Mhm.
you take a picture of it, right? You know, the reds of the tuna, the oranges of the salmon, the greens of the fresh veggies we put in, and people started sharing it on social media and just caught fire. It went viral,
Mhm.
and we had lines out the door. You know, by February.
Oh, that's great.
Um, and one thing that really was a tipping point for us was when a video, a short little video that Food Insider did for us featuring our poke burritos, that caught crazy fire. I think it has 50 million views in the first 24 hours. It was 1 million views
Really?
per hour. And people I didn't talk to in years messaged me like, "Hey, Peter, isn't this a restaurant you built?" You know, it's just kind of crazy. I'm like, "Oh my God, this thing's really, making waves." And after that, our line doubled, tripled, and quickly after that, people started knocking on our doors like, "Hey, you guys
Hmm.
franchising this thing?"
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was never the plan. You know, the plan it was for our team to just open corporate stores. Let's really do our best to see how we can become leaders in the segment, being one of the first in the space. Let's figure this thing out, right? But people knocked on our doors like, "Hey, we want a franchise," and we had to quickly look into that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to dig into that for sure because there's a whole bunch of topic to talk around the franchising aspect of it. But let me go back to
Mhm.
this viral thing for a second.
Yeah.
Was it impromptu is not the word I'm looking for, but did it happen accidentally, or did you find this insider and say, "Hey,
Mhm.
shoot this video and post it and see what happens"? Because you can
Yeah.
never guarantee a clip is gonna hit.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more?
Oh man, yeah, it was totally by accident. And
Yeah.
and I think anything catching viral, there's just so many
Hmm.
variables, right? It's how the
Absolutely.
internet works is crazy. But at the time we had lines, like I said, and a lot of local PR. They were interested in featuring some sort of quick clip on us.
Hmm.
New York Times wrote a story. All these big guys wrote stories. And
Hmm.
Food Insider, they do these short little 60-second clips of restaurants in New York City.
Hmm.
And I remember one weekday lunch. I think it was like a junior level, maybe even an intern came in with just a tiny little camera, nothing professional. And she's like, "Hey, can we feature a quick story?" And keep in mind, our space was a little hallway, right? Really
Tiny.
tight.
Yeah.
There wasn't even enough space for two of our employees to go side by side to cross that little
Huh.
back serving line. So we're like, "Hey, we're about to enter our lunch rush. Can you make it quick? And we'll do our best to accommodate you, but we really got to serve our guests." And she's like, "Okay, got it." She did a quick little a clip, posted it that Friday, and yeah, it just caught fire. And this was, you know, it wasn't like the best video or anything, but for
Yeah.
whatever weird reason, it just caught fire.
Yeah, sometimes it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be the best quality video. That's what, yeah, we would tell
yeah,
folks all the time. Everybody wants to be perfect on camera. You want to have the perfect
hmm
script and the perfect lighting, but sometimes you just gotta
be
talk or
authentic.
this
Yeah.
catches on or whatnot. Have you found? I would think with your demographic and your food that has been a good channel overall. The social channels,
hmm
whether it's Instagram or
hmm
otherwise, has that continued to been the case?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, especially around 2015. Um, it helped us a lot. I think it just our demographic was on there, right?
Mhm.
Right age group,
Yeah.
and I think our food, like I said earlier, it just perfectly lends itself to visually to that platform. And to this day, we're still very involved with micro influencers and all that to
Hmm.
help
Hmm.
spread the word.
Yeah. You know what I was curious about, because you obviously have a lot of units now, not McDonald's with a 10 bazillion, but
Mhm.
with so many units, are the individual locations in charge of their own social media, or do you keep an umbrella that handles it? I'm always curious about that.
We have a main account. We have a main Pokeworks Co. So at
Mhm.
Pokeworks Co. That's our main Instagram handle, which we do most of the postings. But we do allow our franchisees to have their own local,
Mhm.
which they can take content from the main account and post it to their own. It's just it's kind of a mystery how the algorithm works. Of how to reach your hyper local audience, and I think
Right.
that's the most important piece in advertising.
Yep.
No matter how big you are, even if you're McDonald's, I feel like the most important marketing is still your 1 to 2 mile radius, right? We do give that flexibility to our franchisees to be able to do that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I
Mhm.
appreciate that. And another thing is that, speaking about local market and bringing customers back in, I was on the site. I saw loyalty piece,
Mhm.
rewards. How do you think about rewards? How do you entice customers to utilize them? Yeah,
Mhm.
because we all have. I got the app. I got several restaurants in here. It
Yeah,
does have a factor in choosing where I go. How do you think about it?
yeah. We I agree. I think it definitely affects my decision. I have I have a whole folder of restaurant
Hmm.
apps,
Hmm.
and every once in a while, I'm like, hey, what deal are out there? Before I go. And these days, I think people are more cost conscious. So if
Yeah.
there's any deals, definitely going to sway my decision. And for Pokeworks, I'm proud to say we were the first poke chain to have a proprietary loyalty app that we built back in 2016.
Okay.
Try to stay ahead of the curve. And just actually last month, we upgraded our loyalty app to make it a little bit more um, fun for the loyalty customers. Before it was very simple, spend $100, you get $10 or whatever you can go
Yeah.
towards a bowl. Now we've taken notes from the big guys and made it more stepwise. Every once in a while you kind of like McDonald's, you get a free fry on every Friday or whatever it was, right? These little rewards, and we made it more achievable. So for
Yep.
Pokeworks, once you spend a small amount, you can use that towards a drink, towards a side, towards an appetizer, towards a dessert, and we've made it a little bit more fun.
I think
So
that's a good. I think, first of all, I echo that, and I encourage other folks to take that approach. I just, if you go back way in time, when there was, I don't have one in front of me or
stamp
anything, but
cards,
when there was the sandwich card, and you and
yeah,
you and you, when you first get it, you're like, oh, this is good. I'm going to get a free sub, and you
right,
realize you got to get 10 stamps, and you're like, you never cash the things in, right?
exactly,
And,
yeah.
and it's similar with some of these points. You accumulate them, but you don't use them. But I
Mhm.
have seen other brands start to do surprise rewards. Here's something
Mhm.
small, an
Yeah,
enticement, because you're in our program, to
yeah.
obviously to bring you back in and encourage that visit. So I do appreciate that, rather than to wait a long time to get a benefit, having smaller steps along the way. That's great. So
Mhm.
let's talk about your model. It's obviously small footprints,
Mhm.
lower costs, operating. So it because, as you know, right, operating a restaurant is very difficult when you have all the challenges and costs, but you're trying to streamline it to
Mhm.
be profitable. How do you guys talk about that to prospective franchise operators? Say, hey,
Mhm.
this format works.
Yeah. It goes back to that aha moment for coming up with this concept. Um, Going back to running a full Japanese sushi restaurant, one of the major
Mhm.
challenges was labor.
Yeah.
Sushi chefs are high skilled individuals, harder to hire, and with Poke, that is solved because we're serving a lot of the same foods in different format that entry level employees
Hmm.
can take on, and
Hmm.
they can start making bowls after 2 3 hours of training.
Hmm.
With the build out advantages, there is we don't have a hood in our spaces, so no
Hmm.
no hood, no grease trap, so that dramatically reduces your
Yeah,
capex.
it does.
If you're especially in the city, I remember when we were in New York, some spaces you don't have the venting going up 20 stories,
Right.
which would cost you 200K just to put in that.
Oh, geez.
So that was huge. We were able to take spaces only coffee shops were able to take. So our back house is essentially a prep kitchen. Two comp sink, sorry, a three comp sink, a prep sink, stainless steel tables, rice cooker here and there. They're all electric, and everything's off the shelf. No custom equipment or anything.
Mm.
So
Mm.
labor and build out, those are two advantages. It also opens up real estate flexibility for us. That was huge too. I think right now a lot of concepts in our segment, they're looking for that 1,500 square feet space, so it becomes really competitive.
Mhm.
So anything that we can do to take a space that other concepts might not work, that's huge for us.
Yeah, tell me more about the location piece of it. We have I guess it would be a competitor of yours that's opening up in my town. One of the first in that concept to be where I am, and they're it
Mhm.
looks like they're going to be a little kind of a narrow shop. But how do you think about
Yeah.
location in terms of where to be, why to
Mhm.
be there, how big it has to be, and signage, build out, menu boards.
Yeah.
What goes through your head?
Visibility is king, especially for I believe for fast casual, convenience and visibility is
Yeah.
good. It's not a destination, right? It's not a full service restaurant where you can be in the hipster part of town in the warehouse area where people drive to. We look for high traffic corners, visibility, very convenient ingress, egress, parking. Those things are important. Whether it's inline, most of the time our space is going to be inline.
Mhm.
And cap would be always be nice, but inline works for us. And within the space, within the four walls, dining room, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of dining rooms these days are pretty empty, right?
Mhm.
Most people
Mm.
are either getting takeout, third party pickup, and
Yeah.
things like that. It's kind of changing. So we're reducing our footprint in our front of house a little bit.
Mhm.
We don't need to
Mhm.
provide as much seating. Um, and yeah, so we're able to
Mm.
save a little bit more space that way, but allocate a little bit more for pickup, right? Making a nice pickup station for the drivers, having a place by the POS for drivers to check in, things like that. So we're designing for those elements.
Isn't that fascinating? The change you've probably gone through in the last 5 years, along with COVID and that third
Yeah.
party delivery and pickup, and a lot of folks, have ad libbed it. There's a shelf over there, and that
Mhm.
idea kind of works. Or they put the DoorDash orders here, and it's
Mhm.
kind of schlocky because it wasn't thought out. It became after the fact, and now you're building units with that as a primary focus. It sounds like.
Yeah, totally. We did the same thing. We had to buy shelves offline and put it in our space.
Yeah.
Some by the door, some by the cash register, and now we're kind of consolidating, having a system around it now. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's the way people order. You place it ahead. You go in again, especially you kind of. I'm sure you have a younger demographic in a lot of locations. They order on an app. They come in. They pick it up. They go. What if you were to say you talked about labor? Has labor been a pain point for you though, in terms of finding folks, and wages are increasing everywhere? Of course, in
Hmm.
New York City, they're wild anyway, but
Yeah.
all over the place. Tell me about your people challenges.
Yeah, I think we're feeling it like everyone else. We operate in 20 states, some of them being
Mm.
Washington and California, where you have
Hmm.
some of the highest wages, New York. But we make it work. Even with the increases, we're able to maintain benchmark or beat benchmark in terms of our labor numbers. So we see definitely a huge benefit in other states where wages haven't been as much of a challenge. But I think compared to a lot of concepts that serve similar foods, we have the advantage because
Hmm.
our training system, we develop it where a 15-year-old, 16-year-old comes in as their first job. And as long as they care about what they're doing, they can make a perfect poke bowl within 2-3 hours,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
It's not like a sushi where you're days of training, cutting and rolling the perfect sushi roll. We've developed a system where we can get someone up to speed really quickly. So
Okay.
that's been helpful. Yeah.
I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, and it may not be most recent because I don't know when I saw it, but I saw that a longtime worker was one of your new franchisees. I forget how it was
Mhm.
phrased, something like
Oh,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
Leland Kendall. He was our first ever employee and someone I worked very closely with.
Yeah. That's awesome.
This is our New York City.
Yeah.
I remember he's a friend of my brother, and while I was setting up that first store, he hit us up on Facebook. It's like, hey, what's this restaurant you're building in New York City?
Yeah.
I'm looking for a job. So he comes over. Amazing guy, and I hire him on the spot. It's like, hey, why don't you help me with this? I need some help. I remember like cleaning off the dust on the wall shelves as construction was ending with him, and,
Yeah.
and we're figuring out how things were working, how to place our ingredients and things like that. And Lillian, through 3 years, was assistant manager, general manager, then district manager, And then once we had our franchising up, he became director of franchise support role.
Mm-hmm.
Around COVID, he went back to Nepal, spent time with his family, started doing his own thing. And then a couple of years ago, we started talking again. And this time, he's like, "Hey, look, Peter, I want to start exploring opening some Pokeworks in my hometown here in the U.S. In Boston." So we started talking that, and we just signed a 7-store deal with him a couple
Oh,
months ago.
yeah.
So it was really meaningful for me, just seeing that full circle from someone very close to me. He was at my wedding. He's like a brother to
Yeah.
me, and for him to come full circle and do this on himself, but by himself, to open a store it's really touched.
Yeah, that's great. Good story. Good story there. Yeah, and you. Well, let's talk about franchising then. Since we're right there, you're finding operators all over the place, and maybe it's typical that they're signing multi-store deals, or maybe folks are doing one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You've obviously went through the process of building out that big document. There's a disclosure. You got to tell all the secrets and all the good and the bad of the business and everything in between. Talk about that in general, like, building out the information. Probably you probably learn a lot about yourself in terms of when you try to put it on paper.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was something we had to learn, right? We didn't have any franchising background. So 2016, we had some consultants help us, talk to a lot of lawyers, figure that document out. But everything's in there, like you said, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, it's mostly good.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, everything's good. But it's a very standard doc, I think. Going through that and how to bring people on for franchising, I think that was really important of learning who to bring on. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we're not just growing for the sake of growing, and we're not just gonna allow anyone who knocks on our doors to become a franchisee. I think one of the lessons we learned over the years is they're long-term partners. Our franchisees are very close. We're very close with them.
Mm-hmm.
And their success is our success. So in order to do that, it needs to be a partnership that makes sense. Someone who shares our core values, someone who shares our vision, someone who trusts us, and vice versa. So that's been a learning curve for us, and I think we're at a good spot with that.
I had it up, and I might still have it up because it's a separate site from the website. Maybe I don't have it up.
Pokeworks franchising.
Yeah. So Pokeworksfranchising.com. That's a separate site that has some of that information. A lot of good stuff there. You read the story, like, it's very compelling. Very, very compelling information there, for sure. And then the main site, we're missing not doing this earlier, but the main website is Pokeworks.com, which is easy to find. You got a good domain. You got a good domain. Talk about finding those partners. How do you find people that you want to? It's not like it's almost like getting married. It's a very significant relationship.
It is. Yeah. So I'm currently Chief Development Officer. So one of my roles is franchisee franchise sales.
Mm-hmm.
And, we do the basics, PR, make sure we have the ads going on and everything. But the most effective sales tool that we have is making sure our system does well, right? Mm-hmm. Once our unit economics are strong, people will find us and they'll come knocking on our doors. If, during COVID, when our unit sales, I'm sure most concepts suffered, we didn't get as many phone calls. And I'm not going to go out of our way to try to sell during those times, right? It means that something's wrong inherently with us, and we need to solve that first. So recently, coming out of COVID, our unit economics have been improving quite a bit, and we're getting more and more calls. So I would say the most important thing is making sure your unit economics work, and you have something that will help other people achieve their dreams of running their business and making money, right? We're not just selling franchises for the sake of selling franchises.
Yeah. No, really, somebody can put together, like your buddy that you're talking about there. If he builds out 7 units, I mean, that can change his whole trajectory and his family's trajectory. So 72 now. Mm-hmm. Is it 5 a year, 10 a year? How's the growth look down the road?
Our goal is 10% growth per year. We try to hit that. But I think coming out of COVID, it humbled everyone quite a bit. Excuse me. And for us, we're just like, hey guys, let's not grow for the sake of growing, right? Let's make sure every site we pick, and real estate is tough, right? Real estate is timing. It's a little bit of luck. You just constantly have to be on the lookout for good spaces, but sometimes they're not there. and we're not going to force our hand to go into a inferior space just because we need to hit a X% growth per year. So we're really trying to grow with intent here. But to answer your question, maybe 7 to 10 stores a year.
Yeah. Okay, good. A question, a phrase that's come up a lot in recent episodes is this word pain points. Is there anything, we talked about labor, and maybe that's one of yours. Anything else you consider a pain point in the business for you guys right now?
Oh yeah. There's there's always some pain points. You know how it is. I'd say pain point for us would probably be I would say operational excellence, and I think we do a good job, but we can always do a better job. And is being consistent is difficult, right?
Yeah.
72 stores, I think we do a fantastic job. Actually, our FBCs, franchise business coaches, visiting all the stores, making sure our product, our brand, our customer service, everything is at the level that we are at. But it's not always going to be the case. We're not perfect, right? There's always going to be one store that's not doing it, and I think this is going to be it's a never-ending battle. But it's just, how do we develop even better systems to ensure that we hit that?
Yeah, it's a challenge for everybody. I'll speak from the customer side. I'm out and about just eating all the time, it seems like, with the kids and the family. And, it's very common to get a mediocre experience from staff. Food's usually good and adequate and so forth. But if you could just get above that adequate level, you stand out, because it's mediocre everywhere. Just let's get to that excellent standpoint. And it's really makes a big difference. But let's flip to kind of our podcast bonus question mode, where I ask you a few kind of things about your books and advice and so forth. So let's go to advice first. You're a growing business. You've been around, mom, dad in the restaurant business. Any best piece of advice you've received that you'd share with folks?
Yeah, I like you said, my dad gave me this advice very early on, which is just to be kind, be empathetic, and be consistent. Seeing him, grow. So we immigrated to the U.S. in 1995. He's immigrant story, came from with nothing, worked 24/7 in the first restaurant he owned.
Yeah.
But even as he grew, he made sure to lead by example and be nice to every single employee. And I think it goes such a long way, right? And it's not just being nice to employee, to your team, but to vendors, to customers, to everybody. And I think being nice and being kind goes a long way, right? And being consistent.
Yeah.
It gains trust, and that trust can develop into much bigger things.
Yeah. Really does. Sounds simple, right? Sounds simple, but it's absolutely powerful.
Yeah. And one of our core values at Pokeworks is spreading aloha, one of our 6. And that's just to say, spread kindness with each other, and try to see things from other people's perspective and treat them with respect.
Excellent. I love it. What about a favorite quote or a saying, something you might slap on a wall or on a logo? What do you think?
Yeah. Forbes actually quoted me. I said this when on the article there, but passion is half the equation, but grit is the other half. And that's I remember starting Pokeworks. It was some tough days early on, trying to figure everything out, working those crazy hours. And the passion was definitely there, right? But there were some days where you're like, oh man, I don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. to do this again. And that's where grit comes in, right? You got to grind it out. And I always say, running a restaurant is like hosting a party day after day day after day, right? You got to be a good host. You got to put on a smile. You got to be positive for your guests and your employees. But grit is definitely needed.
Yeah, it's a live moving parts business all the time, constantly. I think it's here somewhere. Shoot, maybe it's not there, but there's a good book, Grit, Angela Duckworth. I think she's an author, and it talks about stories like that, where just that extra bit is what gets you through. But speaking of books, I always like to go there. Any recommendations, something you read recently, or something that is you just always feel like, hey, this is something you got to check out. What do you think?
Yeah. I have a toddler and a newborn at home. So one of the books that's been impacting me a lot is "Oh, the Places You'll Go" by Dr. Seuss. And it's such a powerful book. I read it, and I'm probably more touched than my daughter is. But on a serious note, I have this with me right here. Attraction
Oh, I've
by
heard that
Gino
a couple of
Wickman.
times. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a book that our team at Pokeworks and the leadership team we've really embraced. It's a very simple, powerful book to help you run your business and get your team aligned. Kind of simplifies everything: how to run meetings, how to
Hmm.
run more effective meetings, how to set more defined, measurable goals. Just simple things that I think we all kind of know, but just having a book to make sure that the whole team is speaking the same language has helped us a lot.
Good. Yeah. Listen, first of all, let's go back to Dr. Seuss for a second. You can't go wrong with that whole library of books. There's
Oh
just
yeah.
if you don't have the whole library, ours are older than yours, and I cleaned up downstairs. But I think I saved that a batch of like 10 books, and they're all incredibly enjoyable to read for the kids. But
Yeah.
good luck with those guys growing up. By the
Oh
way.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So mistakes, lessons
Mhm.
learned. Anything come to mind when you think about that?
Yeah, for me, I would say my biggest lesson was finding balance,
Hmm.
work-life balance. People talk about it, but to practice it is tough and takes practice. But health is king, right? And,
Hmm.
and family is first. And I think finding a balance to kind of block out work and say, okay, now is family time. Now I need personal time to focus on mental health is something that is not talked about enough. Right? I think at least what I see on social media and articles, it's this hustle hard mentality that's
Hmm.
everyone's talking about. You got to hustle hard, blah, 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 blah,
Hmm.
make big money, blah, blah. And I think kids are getting influenced by that. And yeah, no, it's good. I think you have to work hard, right? Grit, going back to grit, but understanding how to balance that with dedicated time for yourself or for family, I think is really important. And I think, yeah.
Yeah, much like yourself and our audience members in the restaurant business, there's always something you could be doing, of course, right? There are people
Hmm.
and talk about 72 locations. That's 72 problems times 20. So there's always something that could be taking your time. One of
Yeah.
our most recent guests flipped that word work life, and he says, think about it, instead of work life balance, life work balance, and
Oh,
you flip
nice.
the idea of just a small change in the mindset. Yeah, you have to have that segmentation in order to be healthy and happy and grow. Your
Oh, that's
life has to
great.
be important as your work. So
Yeah.
good stuff there for sure. You guys are growing. Talk about maybe the restaurant industry in general, trends you
Hmm.
might see over the next couple of years. What do you think?
Yep. I think no doubt automation and tech will continue to grow its reach within the industry to combat labor costs. Something I
Hmm.
talked
Hmm.
about. Um, you're seeing all these companies develop automation for beverage making, for
Hmm.
you see Sweetgreen and some of the big guys creating assembly line automations, things like that, which may replace human interactions. But one of the things I think is important is that to remember is that at the core of the restaurant industry is hospitality,
Yeah.
right? And as long as it doesn't kill that, I think we'll be okay. But that's something I always kind of try to figure out, which is, you're going to go into stores with all these robots or automation, and there's going to be one guy behind a counter, and that guy probably won't be very
He
happy
won't
to
be
see you.
happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember walking to a burgers. I won't say which brand, but there were like 6 kiosks and one guy behind a counter. And I was like, I want to order with you. He's like, no, just go over there. And I was like, oh man, this experience is very different. And
I agree.
but anyways, that's a trend I see. But I just hope that people remember what got us here, which is hospitality, right?
Yeah, I know it's a dangerous slope, and we'll see where it heads. There are restaurants. I did have a similar experience recently where it was you were forced to order at the kiosk, and it was my first time there. I'm just like, I just want to talk to you who knows something,
Yeah, yeah.
and it was like a challenge. So I don't know where it's going. I know there's costs involved and labor and stuff, but man,
Hmm.
I hope we do retain that special aspect of it. So last kind
Yeah.
of question, then I don't know
Mhm.
where it's going to go, but I always like to ask this one. What's one thing that not too many folks know about you? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I thought about this. I mean, just most recently, I picked up pickleball not too long ago
Ah,
this year,
gotcha.
and I've been completely addicted to it. I'm spending talk about work life balance. I'm spending a little bit too much time on the pickleball
Yeah.
courts, but it's so fun. and it burns a surprising amount of calories. So that's good, especially after Thanksgiving. I'll be out there.
Well, listen, you're preaching to the choir. I will 100% back you up there. Same thing.
Yeah.
We started about a year ago, and then took 6 months, didn't play at all. And then for the last 6 months, been playing a lot.
Nice.
Played this morning, played over the weekend, played over Thanksgiving. We just happen to have a rec group that's only 5-10 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
You go in the mornings, it's pickup. You just go and you play, and you leave when you want. So everything you said, it's just, you get out some energy and get some sweat. And so I love it. If you haven't played pickleball, I don't know who you are anymore, because it's been growing. it's been growing like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good. All right. Well, hit them with closing stuff, parting wisdom, thoughts. Hit them with the websites. Anything we didn't hit on that you'd like to share? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot. Thank you. But Pokeworks, check us out. Pokeworks.com is the website. If you're interested in franchising, it's pokeworksfranchising.com. Check us out. We have locations across 20 states. So see if there's one near you. Give us a try.
Yeah, awesome. All right, folks. Peter Yang of Pokeworks. You can find them at pokeworks.com and also pokeworksfranchising.com for more great restaurant marketing, service operation, people, and tech tips. Stay tuned to us here at runningrestaurants.com. In the meantime, do us a favor. Please hit a like button, a subscribe, or rate us or review us wherever you're listening or watching. That stuff really does help. We do appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks so much, Amy.